What's up, people? You're listening and watching the RAPS Talk podcast presented by HipHoopJunkies.com and HoopHeadsNorth.com. Hoops Talk out of Halifax. My name is Romy Aquino. I have with me
Jean-Francois.
And we got a new guy here. What's going on? Mike
Masaya, Montreal.
Montreal. Welcome, Mike.
Representing the French-Canadian side of things. We love it. We love it.
Thanks, merci beaucoup.
Pas de problème.
So happy Thanksgiving to you guys. I mean, obviously we're Canadian, but in the U.S. they're celebrating Thanksgiving, and so it's cool. There's no basketball on today. It's all football, and everybody in the States is getting ready to go shopping tomorrow.
There was some college basketball earlier today, though.
Oh, was there? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No NBA today.
That's right.
So Mike, let's talk to you first. Well, before we get into the Raptors this year, I know obviously you live in Montreal and you were at the preseason game between the Raptors and the Knicks, and you also attended a special it's a breakfast with Masai Ujiri, Dikembe. Let's give a rundown what happened in Montreal.
Definitely. To be honest, we were chatting a little bit before we started, and I mentioned that the breakfast meeting with Masai Ujiri, Dikembe Mutombo, and Vice President of Marketing Mark Tatum for the NBA actually went by relatively quiet in terms of how much hype there was regarding it and those attending. So basically, it was a breakfast meeting. It started pretty early, around 7:30 in the morning. We got there and we went upstairs, and basically there was everything set up for us, all-you-can-eat breakfast essentially. And you can sort of tell the room was quite nervous, and we were trying to sort of figure out, a friend of mine was with me as well, trying to figure out who exactly was who. There was some media there as well. There was quite a bit of security, to be honest, for an event so, candid and early in the morning. But nonetheless, shortly after people started eating, some people seemed too nervous to eat, but eventually Masai Ujiri glided in, if I could say so, really laid back, sport coat and all. Dikembe Mutombo walked in, and I think, even though I think the majority of people thought they were there to see Masai and Mark Tatum, Dikembe just really, his presence alone, and history and height, of course, just had all eyes on him before they even went through and started doing the introduction. So it was something really to see once it kicked off.
It was a Q&A. Was it a Q&A type of session? Like, were you able to ask some questions?
Well, the way it worked is after everyone had a little bit to eat, Masai, Mark, and Dikembe, they actually went from table to table introducing themselves, and that was pretty amazing. They basically asked you who you were, what you did, how you were involved, how you heard about the event, and you could sort of get a quick question in there as the line started building for those that were impatient to wait for their turn. But I did get to ask Mark Tatum a question, or ask his opinion on something, which was really stat-driven. And I know that fantasy leagues are huge, and there's a lot of talk about numbers. And I asked him very quickly how he felt about it, and he said it's something that allows a real micro understanding of what's happening. And he said he agreed with me in that sometimes it's good to sort of look at the overall picture of what players are doing without the ball than always what can be tabulated. So I thought that was pretty cool to get that off my chest to someone like him, and him kind of acknowledge that it sort of made sense.
Pretty cool, yeah. So, what was it? Did you get a chance to get a photo with Dikembe as well, or talk to him?
Well, Dikembe, I did not. That line, surprisingly, I'm calling them lines. It was really everyone just jumped up from the table pretty much, and his crowd, his circle actually was the largest of everyone there, of the three men there. So it was really tough to get a photo with Dikembe. I would have liked to, but he was doing a lot of the handshaking for the most part until sort of Masai came in. I got a picture with Masai Ujiri shaking his hand, and I was a bit starstruck, I won't lie. Instead of asking him some sort of deep question, it was really just his praise. I was just giving him praise about what he's done since he's got to Toronto, and how much I appreciate what he's done. The fans love it, and then we're watching closely. So I guess I was sort of blobbering to him, and he's used to it, but he was really friendly about it and shook my hand, took a couple photos, and he just kept working the crowd, and people were just happy to see him. Everyone was just glowing.
Awesome. Sounds like a great event. I mean, just to kind of have that, that FaceTime and hear them talk about different things as well is really cool.
It really was, and then not to be long-winded, but after the handshaking session was complete, if I could call it that, we actually went down to the main arena, normally where the Canadians play, and they had sort of, quarantined off an area where we could sit, and they had set up a panel for all three to essentially be interviewed by a mediator who was asking them general questions, sort of current event type questions, and what their ideas were for the future of the NBA and where they've come. NBA cares was a huge topic because during that time there was a lot of media coverage on Ebola, and Dikembe had quite a lot to say on that and other things too that don't necessarily make it to the front pages, and that was interesting. And also Masai was quite candid about his feelings towards those that say they don't want to play for Toronto for whatever urban legend reasons, like taxes or whatever it might be, and that was quite interesting, and everyone got a laugh out of that too. So the topics varied, and I think that was really cool to see them in that setting. And then after, like I said, there was a Q&A where people got to ask some questions.
That's very cool. That you got to experience that. I mean, it's not often like NBA events kind of like that. I mean, you have an opportunity to attend. So I mean, obviously that was cool, and then the game against the Knicks. You were able to see that as well?
That I was not able to see. We did eventually get to see the team practice though, which was good. They slowly made their way onto the court, and essentially there was quite a strict rule about cameras, which I didn't know they were going to enforce, but people obviously got their shots in. DeMars hid himself under his hoodie in the corner. Amir Johnson sort of did the same, and we got to see a scrum with the players for quite a bit. And then Dwayne Casey made his way out, and we got to see a little bit of Lou Williams, hit some shots, which I'm sure we'll get to a little bit after. And,
yeah, definitely.
And Bruno Caboclo, the rookie, my heart went out to him a little bit. I think he was a little bit of nerves. Obviously, then the season hadn't started yet, but there was a couple of air balls, but nothing against him in general. But I think it was just sort of the nerves, but to see that the height and the wingspan that they're talking about is absolutely true. He has a lot of potential. I don't believe that 2 years away from 2 years away. I think he's a little bit sooner than that, and I think with the right kind of guidance, which he's bound to get on a team like this, he'll do great.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, I mean, that was good that you get to you got to see the practice and everything, and get to see those guys, like kind of like the guys that are kind of making noise. I mean, right now. So let's talk about the Raptors. You guys ready?
Yep. Definitely. Always ready to talk Raps.
So the Raptors are 13-2. I don't know if you guys predicted this from the start of the season, but 13-2, first in the East, tied with the Memphis Grizzlies, who are also 13-2 for the overall lead in the NBA, and with 9-1 in their last 10. And in the Eastern Conference, like in second, I think it's Washington, who were at 9-5. Yeah. So they've got a bit of a commanding lead. If only the Vancouver Grizzlies were still in existence, Like Canada would be running the NBA right about now.
That's right.
Exactly. Technically, yeah, you're right.
It's incredible when you think about it. Of course, what's interesting about that, Leo Routins was talking about on the telecast the other night about Memphis and the fact that the Vancouver Grizzlies did not want to trade Sharif Abdur-Rahim when the franchise was in Vancouver. So fast forward to when it moved to Memphis, they make that deal. They end up getting Pau Gasol, and the fortunes of that franchise changed shortly after that. I mean, they made the playoffs with Pau, and obviously they traded Pau as well. But it all sorted out. They ended up getting Marc Gasol, Zach Randolph, and the like. But it's interesting because even though it used to be the Vancouver Grizzlies, you never know what kind of moves may or may not have been made if they were still in Vancouver, right?
I think personally with the whole Grizzlies in Vancouver situation and how quickly they were gone, I know there's a lot of things that were made public and then things that we may not even be aware of that fell through that ended up having the team move. I just think there wasn't that same type of, it's not a judgment on the city or the management or staff, but it looks like Toronto really fought it out regardless of what was going on. Now, I don't know if it was the financial reasons majorly behind the Grizzlies moving, but it would have been great. Imagine that, like you said, two Canadian teams, one in the West, one in the East, just leading everything, and it would have been great. There's a lot of talk. There was obviously recently about a team coming to Montreal. People were scratching their heads after the breakfast. Could this be what they're looking for? Sponsors, ownership groups to maybe come through and think of something. So it would have been good, but I mean, Raptors at the first place. I mean, that's not something I would have predicted, to be completely honest, either.
No. Exactly. No, I mean, obviously thought they could improve on their performance from last year, but the fact that they're on such a hot start and they've proven that it's not kind of just been luck, you know what I mean, in terms of the wins that they pulled out. I mean, these guys are kind of like are winning by such a large margin, and they're beating teams like the Memphis and the Cleveland, and then playing teams like Milwaukee. I mean, who've also been playing really well this year, and then winning by 42 points. I mean, 124-82. Let's talk about that game where they played Milwaukee. What's that? Sorry.
With the stat correction.
With the stat correction, yeah. They made a stat correction the next day. They I think they credited one of the John Henson. I think it was a layup, and they recorded it as a 3-pointer. So then they made that correction. Then it tied for the largest lead or the largest win that they had in franchise history. Going back to Miami, and I think was it 2008. Yeah. That was the other one. So let's talk about it. JP, 18 points, 12 rebounds. Kyle Lowry, 20 points, 9 and 5. Lou Williams, 22 points. How impressed have you been with Lou Williams so far with this Raptors team?
I'll let you go ahead first, Mike.
Sure. Lou Williams is very interesting because this is not his first obviously, a tour with NBA teams. I would consider him somewhat of, a veteran, and I think coming in, my expectations were neutral, if that makes sense. I didn't expect too much, although I knew the talent was there. I mean, you participate in fantasy pools, or maybe you don't, but you see the stat lines when you follow the sport, and you know that players have, a certain amount of potential. I think what's happening now is that the type of, I don't want to say philosophy, but culture that the Raptors have is a perfect fit for players who are willing to, share the load, essentially, and not sort of only run through that one type of player. I know he's been around the league quite a bit, but on a team like this, and I know that there's grumblings with minutes perhaps that might come up shortly with Terrence Ross. You don't want to start anything there, obviously, in the locker room, but the truth is he's performing on a level equal to Ross in the numbers, and they're there. You can see them. So Dwayne Casey rather has a pretty awesome problem on his hands in terms of figuring out who to put in for those minutes, because they're both performing well and they're both hot. So pick one and go with either at any given time.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Mike, he's fitting in so well, with the team. He's been a huge spark off the bench for that second unit. Gives the Raptors a bona fide scoring option, when the starters are out. He is a big part of maintaining, the consistency and level of play once the second unit kind of comes in, or he's the perfect option to be able to bring him in to help create a spark if the starting unit, kind of started off a little slow. He's an instant offense kind of guy, and we saw it in Philadelphia in the past as well, and he's a guy that can, light it up. It's funny, though, that his career high, of 36 points, that was, his recent career high just this past week. So it's interesting to see that, he hadn't been able to do that previously, but he's got something to prove. He's coming off an injury, and he's hungry, ready to jump in there. And I think that if I were Coach Casey, and I mean, that's never going to happen, but if I were Coach Casey, I would continue to keep him in the role that he's in, being the sixth man off the bench, still getting, you know what I mean, like close to 30 minutes a night, 25 minutes a night anyway. So I would continue, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing,
Yeah, no, definitely. I think. Obviously, you're going to tinker with the minutes, and you can fool around with the lineups. But if this is working, bringing guys like Lou Williams and Vasquez and Patterson, and guys like Hansbrough and James Johnson in the second unit. They're kind of just, if the starting unit isn't working, then bringing those guys off the bench, and like a guy like Lou Williams, like you said, is instant offense, and and he's confident when he's out there when he's shooting the ball. So I'd leave it as it is for now, and then if you string some losses together, then you kind of make those adjustments. But it's working now. So definitely I'm impressed with not just Lou Williams but the bench overall. And I want to stick with this Milwaukee game before we go into the other games, because that was such a blowout that going into the fourth quarter, there were chants for the Brazilian rookie Bruno, a lot of Bruno chants going in there, and he got to suit up, and he made such an impression at the ACC. I think the crowd was just going nuts for this kid, and he had 8 points. He had an alley-oop on his first NBA basket. He had a block. He hit a three. What's that?
2 threes.
2 threes, yeah. Just impressive. In terms of, how well he played. But I just kind of like the vibe that's, with the Raptor fans and just how much they support this team. And your thoughts on what you saw in that game in that fourth quarter?
It was great because Milwaukee actually had their best one, other than the opening quarter. They actually played their best quarter in the fourth, but by then the Raptors had built up such a lead that it was, and they were just maintaining it. The Bucks were not cutting into the lead at all, so it was a perfect opportunity to get everyone in. Lucas Nogueira, Bruno Caboclo. Who else got in there? Landry Fields got in there.
Yeah, Fields looked good too when he was up there.
Yeah, Chuck Hayes was in there. Everybody who suited up got to play in that game. I think it was 13 players that got to play in the game. So for the Raptors, so that was pretty awesome. I just love the fact that they kept the pedal to the metal. They had that big win just before. How many days before was the previous one?
The Memphis game?
Before, 2 nights before against Memphis, and so that's a big win. And Milwaukee has been up and down this year, but it could have easily been a game that they didn't bring their best effort, and that was not the case. A flat out dominant performance, and it was great to see.
And I just want to maybe piggyback off what Romy said. The key word there is very true, is confidence. I know usually you have those preseason rankings where the schedule comes out and you start going through it with a pen, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. And then over the years, there's a lot of games that the Raptors should have won that they were losing really close in the fourth quarter. So everyone was going through it. The tweets were coming, the frustration in the fourth quarter or third quarter, where they would normally fall apart. But now what you're seeing again is that confidence where they just come out of the gate, and again, they can thank the playoffs for that. With Brooklyn, regardless of how it ended, this team is more confident than I've ever seen before. And I know we're going to get on to some of the other games as well, but I think one of the people that benefited from it the most, personally for me, I think is Jonas Valanciunas, because there's no more hesitation with him, and his head's not really looking at the ground. It's upright. He's ready to go, and I think confidence, like you said, Rami, it's really the big difference here too.
No, I totally agree. In terms of the confidence that they got from the playoff series against Brooklyn last year, and it's kind of flowing through to this year. And they're playing confident and they're looking good. So let's move on to the next game. Their matchup against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who we all kind of knew that it was going to be a tough. Any game against LeBron and the Cavs isn't going to be a walk in the park, even though they're struggling. And Toronto looked. It was another game, and they looked impressive again. 110-93, and it wasn't really like even. It never looked like Toronto lost control. Like they kind of like they played really well, and just LeBron. I mean, didn't look great. I mean, Cleveland overall didn't play well. LeBron had 15 points, but again, the Raptors. I mean, had a strong second half, outscoring the Cavs 54-39. DeMar had 20 points. Kyle Lowry had 23 points, and then like we mentioned before, this is the game where Lou Williams got hot early and had 36 points. So, I mean, another impressive victory. What were your thoughts on how, like, what was kind of like the difference maker in this game for Toronto?
The difference in this game was the second quarter. Cleveland came out and gave Toronto their best shot. Cleveland had lost a couple games in a row, were looking pretty ugly, and they came out and smacked the Raptors in the first quarter. The Cleveland was up 13 after the first quarter. They were up 30-40-21. And the Raptors just hung in there. They didn't lose their composition. They didn't get frustrated. They just stuck in there. They kept doing what they are supposed to do. Just try to look for good baskets, try to move the ball around. And in the second quarter, the shots that they were taking that weren't necessarily falling in the first quarter, those started falling in the second quarter, and they basically flipped the script. They outscored the Cavaliers 35-20 in the second quarter, and they just basically kept the pedal to the metal. Lou Williams had that buzzer-beating three to finish the first half and put the Cavs up by two. Put Toronto up by two, which I believe was their first lead of the second quarter. So they kind of staved off the Cleveland 16-point lead to start the second, and they just powered back, and they didn't look back after that. And like you said, Romy, having that performance from Lou Williams was huge, especially in that game, because not all of the usual contributors for the Raptors were, shooting well from the floor, and he just gave them a big spark.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. What you're saying exactly, Sean. Part of it too is the Raptors have been here before, if that makes sense. I know LeBron has the 2 rings. Kevin Love's stat line can't deny it, and Kyrie Irving, we're all fully aware of what he can do. But it's still new to them. Although that new big three, it's something that they have to get used to. So although LeBron may have been able to bully the Raptors when he was with the Heat, or maybe Kevin Love might have had his way at some point with the Raptors as well, and Kyrie Irving has played them before. This team is essentially the same for the most part, and know what they're trying to do, have been doing it against a lot of teams, often seen as underdog, and now here comes, these 3 All-Stars who aren't sure what they should be doing and when, or so it seems for the early part of the season, but the Raptors, like we said, they're just continuing from where they left off, and I think that's why a lot of teams that may have had some movement are perhaps struggling, not all, but it's an obvious shift. When you look at Indiana, too, having a little bit of difficulty slowly picking it up now, Washington finally getting to where they want to be, and you look at the Raptors, again, they know who they are. It's not a surprise, it's just a continuation, and I think that also helped them really dominate that game at a certain point when it ended up with the victory, because LeBron wasn't sure. Wade wasn't there for him. Bosh wasn't there for him. It was 2 new faces. And the Raptors are going to take advantage of that every chance they get.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was an impressive victory for Toronto. Before I move on to the next couple of games, I mean, we just got to give a shout-out to those fans that showed up to the Cleveland game. I know fans started leaving in Cleveland in the fourth quarter, and then there was like a whole section of probably 150 maybe fans of Toronto Raptor fans in the section, and then all you could watch in the broadcast, or all you could hear, was like the "Let's Go Raptors" chants and everything. It was a pretty cool thing to see that they're getting some steam and they're getting a following kind of like wherever they go now. It was really impressive, especially in Cleveland. But shout outs to those guys, eh?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really smart of them to do, to sort of gather together and make as much noise as possible. And I think all of Canada, honestly, is really feeling it. I mean, you go into work and you hear, water cooler talk is about the Raptors. And that hasn't happened in quite a while, if ever, for a lot of people. Maybe not just in Montreal, but across Canada. So, I mean, you're in the lunchroom and people are going off on their record, and you're like, really? Okay, people are paying attention from all corners of Canada, and I think that's really cool, and that's a perfect example of it. The Cleveland home game to get Raptors champs. What more can you ask for?
No, that's right. I love it. I love it. I mean, bandwagon riding aside, right? Like, that's what happens, when teams are hot. Everyone wants to kind of be a part of it, and that's cool. I mean, that's growing the game. That's exposing people to the game. Maybe fair weather fans who aren't really tuning in or tuning in a little more closely. Raptors are playing a great brand and great style of basketball, very team-oriented, and whatever works to bring more people to watching basketball, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this for plenty of previous seasons, and it's kind of like winning kind of cures everything. I mean, now they're getting. I mean, you always talk about like we don't get enough media coverage in the U.S. and blah blah blah. But now, like ESPN and like your Bill Simmons and everybody's talking about the Raptors now because they're winning, and that's what. I mean, that's what we were talking about before, and then like the whole thing about players not wanting to come to Toronto, but like probably after this season, if it's another successful season, I mean, I don't see like players having an issue coming to Toronto. I mean, knowing that there's a winning franchise.
Right. That's
exactly. And I love Bill Simmons, and then we all love Jalen Rose, but I remember last season there was quite a bit of frustration from Raptors fans when that season preview came out. And a lot of us, me included, didn't forget it. But I'm glad to see that they can sort of make amends and admit that things have changed. And we're hearing a lot south of the border about the Raptors finally, and it's deserved, well deserved, and it's a good feeling. And I think everyone, like you said, Sean, new fans, bandwagon fans, whatever you want to call them, all eyes north. I'm good with that.
Yeah. Definitely. So let's quickly talk about these next two games. They played the Phoenix Suns, 104-100, which was a pretty tight matchup for Toronto. But again, they got it done. Valanciunas was kind of like a difference maker in this one. He had a career high 27 points and 11 rebounds. DeMar was 23 points. Lou Williams 17 points, and I think it was before this game where Lou Williams was named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. I mean, obviously the Raptors were playing well, but it was cool to see like it's not even a starter from the Raptors. It's a guy from the bench that was the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Definitely. What did you guys think of that? With that Williams being named the Player of the Week.
Well deserved, and ties right into what we were talking about team basketball. Just like you said, Romy, it was cool to see that it wasn't even a starter that got the award on the team. It just goes to show you the depth that the Raptors have right now and how well they're playing. The sixth man can shine like that. That's awesome.
It really is, and I think when that was released as Player of the Week, I can't say that I was surprised, but at the same time I sort of was. I don't mean to give two answers in one, but it just shows again that the eyes are focused for the right reasons and on the right people for the Raptors. He did deserve it. There was no doubt about it. And like you said, Sean, it just simply shows the depth of this team. That timidness that I felt was sort of clouding the team for a while is gone, and it's just coming through. And I think while other teams are still trying to maybe find themselves or dig themselves out, the Raptors are making noise, and Lou Williams especially, I think probably one of the better pickups. I mean, in terms of players playing a role on a team and not sort of being the franchise player, expected to be the franchise player, like you said, definitely deserved it, and I think it's surprising a lot of people, which is also maybe why it's getting so much attention.
For sure. Another shrewd and savvy signing by Masai Ujiri, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I did not see Lou Williams making this much of an impact on this team. So, I mean, I'll never question anything that Masai Ujiri does from here on out. The Phoenix game, I mean, unfortunately we weren't able to see Tyler Ennis in Toronto play in front of kind of like his hometown, but unfortunately we weren't able to see him. But then on just last night, Wednesday night, they went to Atlanta, played the Atlanta Hawks, 126-115. Is that a high for this season? I think.
Yep, 126 points. Yeah, it's a season high. Yeah, you got it.
DeMar 27 points.
A rematch of the opening game of the season.
That's right. Yeah, Lowry, 14 points and 13 assists. Lou Williams, 22 points against his former team. And Vasquez, I mean, he's kind of been kind of missing for a few games, but he made his presence felt in, I think it was in the fourth quarter. He finished with 21 points. And Raptors, 6 in a row. I mean, I don't know, like, where they can go now. I mean, they're playing phenomenal basketball, and I just hope that it kind of continues for. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a bump in the road. They kind of had a favorable schedule at the beginning, but I mean, they're looking so impressive right now.
It's unbelievable, really. 2009 was the last time that they'd won 6 games in a row, and the team wasn't anywhere near, the quality level that we have now, and the cohesiveness that you're seeing with this team is just tremendous. Completely, like Mike, you said, like Romy, you said as well, just building off last year's success. We've talked about this in previous podcasts this season thus far, like just not having to work on team chemistry as much through training camp saves you a lot of time. Not having to know what sets you're running, and having guys come in like Lou Williams who are savvy vets who can pick things up quickly. That's a huge benefit when you're trying to build on what you had. And really just can't say enough about the win. About how they've been playing and the winning streak. Almost speechless, really. I mean, well deserved. But every night it's like they either find a way to win in the fourth quarter, or they build a lead and they keep it. If they face a little bit of adversity, there's no panic. They find a way to kind of keep fighting back and regain the lead. It's awesome. It's awesome.
It really is, and then you wonder how much longer it can go, and you obviously hope it goes as long as possible. And I know the next 5 games, I think the 2 games that I think I was most worried about, imagine to say Lakers is not one of them, but I know before they play Sacramento, and I think before they come back from the West Coast road trip to play Cleveland. There's a break in between those games, so there's a break in the Western road trip before Sacramento, and then there's a break after the road trip before they face Cleveland back east. And I think that could help quite a bit with them having a winning record for that little stretch coming back from the road trip. So it looks good. I mean, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. It's Dallas, Lakers, Sacramento, and Utah, but those are all winnable games with a little break in between for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. It's just a matter of, focusing like they've been doing, taking it one game at a time, not looking ahead on the schedule. You've got an opponent tonight. You prepare to the best of your ability for that opponent. Do what you need to do in that game. Get the result that you get. Move on to the next one. Don't look too far ahead. Just take it game by game. The season's long enough as it is, right?
Exactly. Dallas will probably be, out of those 5, the toughest one for sure. So
hands down.
You're still looking at a good chance to have a winning record out of that little 4-game road trip. And then, Dallas is in Toronto. Sorry.
Yeah, Dallas. That's tomorrow night. It's actually that's a 20th anniversary night. So the Raptors will be wearing the purple jerseys again tomorrow night.
Exactly. So they have a chance to come out of the next 5 games with a winning record, and I think if they can get by Dallas tomorrow at home, like you said, they should be looking good, actually.
Yeah. That's going to be another tough game, the Dallas game. And like you said, Sean, it's going to be a 20th anniversary game, and I think they're honoring Jalen Rose in that game. He'll be in attendance. So it should be pretty cool. They'll probably have like a nice video montage of what, Kobe going for 81 on him.
Exactly.
The cool thing I saw today, I guess ESPN has this. I quickly saw it. ESPN has this thing from John Hollinger where they kind of go through the teams and the probability of who's favorite to win the title. Mm-hmm. And currently, the Raptors are a 40% favorite, and over every team in the league to win the title. I think it was maybe Golden State had like a 26% chance, but Toronto, I mean, as of today, has the highest probability to win the title. So
the thing that he does is pretty cool. because it's basically an algorithm in matrix, and so as teams win more games or lose games, it all changes. So it's cool to watch it kind of change as the season goes along, because it's all based on numbers and statistics, which is cool.
It's true, and I think again it goes back to sort of the Raptors being the surprise to others and maybe not so much to their fans. Preseason rankings over the years have always had them maybe making 8th,
maybe
maybe making it to the 7th or 6th,
yeah.
and now they're being labeled as possible champions. So that's it's a real testament to Dwayne Casey. I mean, I'm hoping for Coach of the Year if he can do it, because I mean this is really something special that's happening, and I mean kudos to Memphis Grizzlies as well. They're another team that sort of the grindhouse gets overlooked quite a bit.
Sure
they're always there. They're always playing some of the best defense, if not the best defense, and then just pushing through it and getting wins. It might not be the flashiest basketball, but it gets the job done. So I think it's nice to see that right now the two top teams are, the grindhouse and those pounding the rock. So for me, as a longtime basketball fan who loves the flash as well, I like the hard work too.
Absolutely, no, that's great. That's great. The teams who are working hard finally getting that shine and getting the exposure that normally they wouldn't receive.
Yeah. And like Mike, you were saying, Dwayne Casey for Coach of the Year. I mean, if he goes 80-2, I mean, there would be no question that I'll be Coach of the Year.
Well, I mean, you can hope. Right? I mean,
exactly.
The 72-10 Bulls. The 72-10 Bulls is the guy.
Sometimes the awards can sort of be given based on what happened last year. I know we see that sometimes with some of the player awards for whether it be MVP or Defensive Player of the Year. It's sort of they kind of admit to making a mistake last year, but obviously I don't think he would have gotten it for last year. But I think overall with what's happening and depending on how the season continues, it might be funny now, but you never know. It could.
No, I know.
There's a lot of coaches out there that deserve it for sure, but I think it would be a great story if we can finish the season, top 3, even first place. That would be fantastic, and I'd start arguing and protesting for Casey at that point.
Oh yeah,
definitely. So yeah, upcoming for the Raptors against Dallas, and then they go on a 3-game road trip out west, Lakers, Sacramento, and Utah, and then they come back to Toronto to face Cleveland on December 5th. So it's a good stretch of games. Should be some interesting matchups there, especially like teams like Dallas and like Sacramento, who's been I mean DeMarcus Cousins that's gonna be a tough matchup for like Amir and JV. So Rudy Gay, that's right, yeah. Sacramento, they're a nice young team. And they've got some nice players on that squad, so it's
our boy Nick Stauskas as well. Can't forget about him.
Yeah. Speaking of Nick Stauskas, let's roll into it. The Wenningtons of the week. We're gonna just talk about some of the top Canadians from like the past week. I guess off the top, what I can think of is Andrew Wiggins, who had a career high 29 points, went 9 for 22 from the field, 9 of 10 from free throw, 2 threes, 5 rebounds, 4 steals, 1 block in 41 minutes. So definitely an impressive performance from him against the Sacramento Kings. I believe they lost that game, but still,
just 113-101.
Yeah, so a tough loss for Minnesota, but obviously they're without Love, Minnesota is just a young team, and obviously with Rubio injured, they're going to be. Yeah, exactly. So like they're young. They're going to be exciting, but right now, it's nice to see that Wiggins kind of making an impact. As that number 1 pick. Any guys you want to shout out for the Wenningtons of the week?
Yeah, most definitely. We'll just piggyback right on the Minnesota bandwagon there. Shout out to Anthony Bennett. Past 3 games, he's played really good basketball. He's had 3 double-digit games scoring-wise in his past 6. You've got his game against San Antonio. I didn't check to see what his career high is, but he had a 20-point game in a loss to the Spurs.
That was a career high.
Was a career high. I thought it probably was, just because he hadn't been able to do as much as he had hoped in Cleveland. So I thought it probably was. So he had a career high. Added what was it? Looking here, 3 rebounds and 3 steals in that game as well. So he's starting to get his mojo going. And like we said, with those injuries to Rubio and to Kevin Martin, there's more basketball to be shared, and more opportunities to score, and with Kevin Love out of town too. So things are definitely changed, and a guy like Zach LaVine, who's now stepping into a starting point guard role and being a distributor. A lot of young guns on that team, but they're going to get their time to shine, get their time to really grow as players, which is pretty cool. I'd like to give another shout out as well to Robert Sacre, who he also has been playing really well, back-to-back double-digit games. He had a 10-point game against Dallas, and then, which I think might be his career high, was the 13 points against Denver. I have to double-check that, but a lot of Canadians, putting up some good numbers. Unfortunately, the Lakers aren't doing a whole lot as far as their wins and losses are concerned, but the fact that Sacre is starting to get a little bit of time and making the most of it. I mean, he's still only getting like 15, 16 minutes a game, but he's making the most of that time, which is really cool to see. So hopefully that'll buy him some more minutes as the season goes along. And, Tristan Thompson, the last 2 games that Cleveland's played, huge margin wins over Orlando and Washington, and Tristan's played well. He had 9 points and 11 rebounds, almost back to his kind of double-double numbers, and in the win against Washington, he had 10 points. So, it's great to see, Canadians across the NBA having an impact for their teams. It's awesome. So, fingers crossed for Rio 2016, Canada basketball, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to jump in real quickly and maybe give a shout out to Corey Joseph, who I know doesn't necessarily end up on all the Facebook feeds or Twitter feeds, but I was really curious to see, because there hadn't been too much news coming in from what he's been doing with the Spurs, so I decided to take a look. And it's really, at this point, he's in a good position. In terms of making noise, it might not be there, but when you look at his numbers, I compared him to a backup point guard, Steve Blake, whose numbers are essentially almost the same except for the minutes. And, of course, with that comes sometimes points per game. And then I said, well, let me take a look at a starter who's on a team who's going to get more minutes. And I looked at a player like Jeremy Lin, and again, outside of points per game and minutes, their field goal percentage or free throws are all sort of about the same. Turnovers are even better, and I believe Corey Joseph obviously is playing a lot less minutes. But what I think is a great investment in his skill set is that, one, he's playing with likely the most fundamental team the NBA has seen in a while. He's, I'm sure, picking the brain of Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. He's got, Greg Popovich as a coach. So I think what's going to end up happening with him, compared to Wiggins, although Wiggins is experiencing a lot of losing but has a talent, Corey Joseph, some might say, might not be at the franchise player level of Andrew Wiggins, but with what he's learning day to day, in and out, and then once his numbers start growing and he continues learning from the best, I think he's one, Corey Joseph, that we're going to see make a lot of noise once the Tim Duncans start retiring and Ginobili starts retiring and Kawhi Leonard, and if he stays with the Spurs, he's likely in for a really, really long, successful career.
Couldn't agree more. We gave him a nice shout out last week as well on the podcast, and pretty much the same kind of points that you raised, Mike. I'm on board with you. Unfortunately, he's injured right now with the ankle injury, so he's missed the past few games. But his per minute production this season has been great. I'm in a couple different fantasy leagues, well, several, like we all are, and I actually have him in my 20-team league, and he's been clutch for me, up until he got injured, and then I actually picked up Robert Sacre and threw him in the lineup instead, so that worked out well too. So, when you got a 20-team league, you're getting a lot of different guys in your lineup, but I'm able to really focus on a lot of these Canucks that are doing big things. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think as long as, like you said, once he gets healthy and those minutes keep going up and up, I think he's destined for a really long, successful career, and he's in the best place to learn.
Yeah,
Right now, so he'll be fine.
The only thing is, though, because you weren't on the podcast last week, and I talked about this, I think, Romy, on our first podcast, is the fact that right now the reason why Corey Joseph is getting as many minutes as he is because Patty Mills is out injured, recovering from his arm elbow injury and surgery. So when Patty Mills comes back, which is slated for like January, we'll have to see what happens with Corey Joseph's minutes. But regardless, he's learning a ton, on a day-to-day basis in practice and everything. But as far as his on-court production, we'll have to see how his minutes fluctuate once Patty Mills is healthy and back into the rotation.
No, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's our Wenningtons of the week. Some great performances from the Canadians this past week. And I got a fantasy question before we wrap up, Sean.
Yes.
Maybe you and Mike. Talking about Wenningtons, Kelly Olynyk, I have on my roster.
Mm-hmm.
Taj Gibson was just dropped. Would you pick up? Who would you rather have, Taj Gibson or Kelly Olynyk? Fantasy.
Tough. It's tough because Kelly Olynyk's going to get those minutes night in and night out, but he's young and he's growing. Like the past 4 games, he's put up 2 games where he had no points. Now, that's just the struggles of a young player, kind of like, trying to find his role. He's playing with a team that's growing and learning with the Boston Celtics. Taj Gibson, who's hurt right now, so that's the other side of it. Taj is going to get you quality minutes when he's playing. I think for right now, if you have Olynyk already, I think I would stick with Olynyk. See if you can, or if you have an ability to be able to stash Taj Gibson by dropping someone else who you can afford to drop. Otherwise, I think at this point I would just stick with Olynyk, only because Taj is injured anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Sean, unless you got a timeline on when Taj Gibson's getting back. Like Sean said, just pretty much to piggyback off that, the minutes is a huge thing, and I think right now we're still unsure about Taj Gibson. It's probably not worth the risk. And again, a lot of things are going through Olynyk right now, whereas, the Bulls, someone's going to go through Powell, lots going to go through other players as well. So with Olynyk being the focal point, you might be better off just sticking with him.
All right, man. So I guess I'm going to keep him. I just saw him. I was like, oh, Taj Gibson. I know he's injured, but I was like, when he comes back, maybe he'd be a good guy for some. Obviously some scoring and some rebounds and stuff. So, but I'll stick with him. I'll stick with Olynyk for the time being.
Olynyk had 18 points and 6 rebounds against Memphis. So despite him having a couple of rough nights, he has rebounded pretty good after that. So stick with the Canuck for now.
Okay. I'll do that. So that's it for the podcast. That was episode 71. My name is Romy Keynote. Before I get into the shoutouts, iTunes, if you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, it'd be great if you guys leave a review, especially if you're a listener. Leave a review on iTunes, or give us a shout-out. Shout us out on Twitter. You can find me at Romy Aquino. Sean is at Sean Francois. And Mike, I'm sure you'll see him on more podcasts, at Hoops Addiction. So make sure you follow us on Twitter, the blogs, hiphoopjunkies.com, hoopheadsnorth.com. Mike, do you have anything you want to shout out in terms of where any of your writing is?
Yeah, right now on sportsrant.com and also NBArants.com. That's really where I sort of get all the frustration from whatever topic has been sitting on my chest for a while. So those are short, quick, and sometimes very angry, but NBArants.com is where most of the stuff gets updated.
Okay, cool. So we'll definitely check that out. Check out the website. So that's it for the podcast, episode 71. We out.
Thanks for having me, guys.